everybody. Welcome to PVD Horror. This is Dave. I am joined here today with a horror author like no other, storyteller like no other, Mr. Sean McDonough. Who you might remember we had on, was that last year or the previous year?
Probably the previous year. I put out a book basically every 2 years. So every 2 years, I just give you guys a little poke like, hey,
Yes.
I wrote a book. Can I come back?
Yes. Yep. So about 2 years ago, then we had the 13 Black Cats of Edith Penn. But you've also written a number of other titles, Rock and Roll Death Trip. The list goes on, Beverly Kills. And now we are here today to discuss the sequel to Beverly Kills, Beverly Kills Again. So, Sean, thank you so much for joining. If you like all things horror and want to get the best horror news, interviews, and reviews,
like, subscribe, and ring that bell to follow us and satisfy all your horror needs.
Listen, I love being back. Love talking to just you this time.
Yeah. So you said you pretty much put out a book every 2 years.
Yeah.
Is that because that's how long it takes to kind of be able to create such like an elaborate and detailed story, or is it just like that's just kind of how it's been?
Well, it's a bit of both. I mean, earlier in my life, I could probably crank out closer to like a book a year. When I say that, I mean writing, rewriting, copy editing, cover, the whole kit and caboodle. But, I got 2 kids. I got a regular job I work at.
Yeah.
It stretches things out a little bit. So now it's more like once every 2 years. And, like it's also kind of like a choice. Like I know a lot of indie authors that put out more releases, but a lot of them are shorter. So like I'm just really committed to this is the length I'm doing. This is how long it takes. And that's what we got.
Awesome. I can only imagine what it's like to be an author, because writing is not easy. You need to have ideas coming, and then everyday life can really interfere with stuff, right? I know even just like trying to do basic stuff like podcasting, for example, there's stuff that comes up all the time that we have to balance, and I don't have to put in nearly as much thought into doing this than you do, so I give you a lot of credit.
Yeah. Well, and and what you do isn't easy either, because you have to get other people, you got to coordinate. At least like for me, it's like, well, I got an hour, let me do what I can.
Yeah, just squeeze it in, right?
Yeah, it's really just, that's the commitment. Like, listen, you squeeze what you can when you can.
Do you ever get like so enthralled that you're like actually get angry that you have to break from it at times?
I wouldn't say angry, but like I do recognize like when I've got like a good roll going, and it's like, I gotta get up, I gotta go to sleep, I gotta do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a no. I guess I'll settle on annoying, because it's just like when you're in there, and you don't. It's almost like like you're in the bath and it's warm and it's comfortable, and it's like I don't want to get
out. Yeah. So last time we had you on, we were talking the 13 Black Cats, and the thing that we all really appreciated about it was all the Rhode Island references that you threw into there. That was absolutely amazing. So I found it really interesting with Beverly Kills, the first one. So you have her set in like Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And Beverly Kills is a really interesting book, because it's like I kind of compare it to like Dexter meets Degrassi High.
Yeah. I call it a teen rom-com, except the main girl is just a serial killer.
Yes, she's a psychopath. Yeah.
same structure. Like like this could have been Degrassi or the CW, but the cheerleader murders.
Yeah. Why LA? Why did you choose that setting?
You know what? The pun. I mean, at the time, the story of Beverly Kills, before I was doing books, I was trying to write like movie scripts. And I was in like my senior year of college, where I did like they do like a program in LA for a couple months, and I was just there, and like Beverly Hills, and I was like, Beverly Kills. And listen, the stupidest things will just get you rolling. So like, I had the title, and I was like, well, what kind of book would work with that? And then I came up with this structure and these characters, and then you have to put it in LA. Yeah. And listen, I will tell you, I love Los Angeles. I lived there 3 years altogether. I came home when I was with my now wife, and we wanted to settle down, but I would have lived the rest of my life in LA if I could. Beautiful city. Yeah. Beautiful city.
I'm a fan too. Every time I visited, I never want to leave. I know that that's not, everybody's view of it, but I definitely have an appreciation for it too. I think it's really nice and a lot of fun, and you never know. It's interesting. You never know what you're going to see.
Yeah.
So
It's a city that stays out of your face in its own way. Like you can do what you want in LA. Like, if you want it, if you want to be accepted into it, then yeah, you may not like it. If you're just committed to a place that'll just let you be as weird as you want, Los Angeles.
yeah. So I think one of the interesting things about Beverly Kills is ultimately it's a love story, right? And it's about how love can change our plans. It can alter our priorities and how we see the future. I'm curious, when you were like thinking about the premise of this story and where it was going to go, was that always the idea?
Kind of like I always had that love story structure because listen, that's the teen story. The boy trying to get the girl, and obviously, like it is like in its own way, its own twisted way love story. I think of it more as like a coming of age, like like that's that classic horror subgenre. Because yes, love and the way it changes Beverly is important, but really it's about who she wants to be. Like she's growing up, she thinks she wants to be one thing. Does she really? And that changes as you get a little older. And then I think you really circle back into that at Beverly Kills Again. Because like if Beverly Kills is the coming of age story, Beverly Kills Again is of age. Like, listen, you made some choices when you were 18, 19 because you thought it was all going to be young and romantic forever. But eventually you're 30 and things don't work the way you want. Things don't work the way you think they were gonna.
Yep. And then you're 40. Yeah, and then it's all over.
Coming soon in 10 years. How Beverly got her groove back.
Yes. We have to see that for sure. There's this also, and the reason why I want to like kind of lead us into Beverly Kills so that people kind of get a gist of where she was before we get to that, to Beverly Kills Again. But the one thing about Beverly Kills I have to ask you about is, what is it like writing a love scene from the female perspective?
I did my best. I haven't heard any complaints from anyone saying, what the fuck did you do? So I guess
I haven't heard any complaints is the best line ever right there. That's just I haven't heard any complaints.
Well, listen, after the 13 Black has to beat its pen, that someone called me a bozo for not doing enough research into actual Wicca. So if I screwed up badly enough, someone hopefully would have told me by now.
Yeah. That brings up this like concept that drives me absolutely nuts. And it's that idea that in order to be able to write a story about something or to talk about something, you have to be an expert.
Yeah.
You're not writing a fictional novel.
Yeah.
Is like with the intention to like be an expert in Wiccan.
If you do a needed spell, it's not going to do nothing.
Yes. Yeah. It's fiction, right? So that drives me absolutely nuts. Or even like if you're just trying to like present a topic and people are like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, educate me then, man. Tell me what I need to know. I'll add it in the next story. Yeah. So yeah, as I was reading the love scene, I was just getting a kick of thinking about you writing it. So it has that little element for me, kind of already knowing you.
And even then, listen, I was in my mid-20s, so if there's anyone who knows the female body, it's a 23-year-old man.
That's right.
We have it figured out.
Absolutely. So at the end of Beverly Kills, she makes a really drastic decision, kind of like you were saying. You get to that coming of age point where you kind of have to decide how you're going to move forward. And she decides she's going to stay true to how she saw herself prior to meeting the love of her life and reflecting on like, oh, maybe I do actually like all these people around me and all this stuff. And she makes a hard right turn and just massacres most of them, except for her love interest, who she assumes is going to think she's dead. But at the end of Beverly Kills, we know that he's like, I will find her. Right. What a way to lead us in. Yeah. What a way to lead us in. It's almost like you knew you were going to write a sequel the whole time.
You know, it took 10 years, but we got there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it came out when you were ready. You needed the inspiration, I'm sure.
You know,
Um, and
the
what was it
inspiration,
like those 10 years? Like, was it?
yeah. Well, you know, like you said, the inspiration also, like, you know, like the perspective. You know, listen, I wrote Beverly Kills, you know, when I was young and when I was in a similar headspace of, you know, you got to chase your dreams, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then listen, 10 years went by and all of a sudden, you know, life is different. And that lets you look at it differently.
Yeah. Which is almost what's needed, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
write about her in her later years, it's nice to have a newer perspective on it.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question for you. Is it possible to be a murderer and have love in your heart at the same time?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question. And the answer is maybe. Well, no, listen, you know what? It's like, you know, it's interesting to kind of be in her head. And like, you know, like a lot of reviews that I get of that book that I enjoy are the ones that are like, she is an absolute fucking monster. And yet you care what's going to happen to her.
Yes.
And I think, you know, that's almost what it's like, you know, like to be her. Like, you know, she is a monster, like not in a I'm damaged kind of way, just in like an I was born a monster kind of way.
Yeah.
But she is capable of caring about people in her own very specific kind of way.
She does throughout the story and just never gives herself credit for it until that moment of reflection that she has, right?
Yeah, because like I don't think she, you know, if we can get into this character stuff, like I don't think she feels it, but she reacts to it, and like you see that in how she acts. Like she doesn't get the kind of warmth you or I might if we were around people we care about, but like she has the same motivations.
Yep.
That make her act.
There's also this interesting thing that happens. I see it a lot with like kids that I work with, or even like adults I work with that have just been like forever told that they're bad. You know, everything that they do is nitpicked, or their parents like hyper focus on all the wrong stuff they do, and they never give them praise for anything. So they just literally start to think that they're bad. And as I'm reading Beverly, it's like it almost is like she's telling herself she's this thing because of the act she's driven or wants to commit. So like anything she does is immediately disregarded. Anything good that she does is just nothing. I'm only this one thing, and which is bad. And then she realizes at some point that like, oh wait, maybe I always talk about duality. It's like there is a little bit of that in all of us, right?
That's actually good. I might steal it. Like, you know, when this goes live, I'm gonna just like take a little note here, like, yes, this is good.
But that is literally what I was like in my head thinking as I'm reading like Beverly, because like she'll go from 1 minute of committing heinous acts to the next minute she's, you know, having a conversation with a friend, or like, you know, she's in a play, but then obviously she keeps going back and forth to the heinous acts. And I'll leave that. Your kills are brutal. And Beverly, so when we get to Beverly Kills, it starts off right away with a kill.
Yeah.
Why so quick?
Well, you know, technically, yes, it starts with the kill, but it starts actually with, you know, the party, which leads to the kill. Which, to me, like, you know, like I wanted to immediately capture, you know, that dichotomy. Like, here's this girl, she's at a party, she's playing flip cup, you know, she's flirting with some idiot boy, but she's doing it so she can rip him in half. Yeah. And it's just like I immediately wanted to set that, because that's the whole story. Like, you know, it's the straddle between, you know, the teen rom-com and the slasher. So like I wanted to immediately be like, this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you figure, like, you get the tone right now, you stick around and you get out, but this is what's up.
Yeah. So Beverly Kills and Beverly Kills Again, very similar in opening. So we have something, we have the, you know, her getting together with a guy who's like clearly got intentions to like, oh, something's going to happen here. And then she just has her way with them, right? Was that intentional to kind of have those openings mirror each other in a way, but just seem more mature?
It was definitely intentional. But, you know, like if you read the first one, you read this one, like, you know, you pick up on like the little changes in the details, like in terms of, you know, like if you remember that, now we're getting into spoiler territory for whoever. Like, Beverly Kills ends with her like going to New York. Beverly Kills Again picks up, she's in Alabama,
Yeah.
So clearly, like from the beginning, like things are not exactly where we expected them to be. And like I put in enough, I think, little hints to make you feel familiar, but at the same time, like a little off balance about like what changed. And obviously, there's also the little twist at the end there, which I sprinkle throughout just to kind of, because the whole thing of Beverly Kills Again is change. So I wanted to kind of like hit you occasionally with these changes you didn't see coming to really reinforce that. Like, listen, things are not what you expect when you were 18.
Yeah.
Once you're 30.
And I love that because it's not just for her, it's for the reader too. So
Exactly.
like we experience that unpredictability or that like just that change while she's experiencing it, or sometimes almost in real time as she's experiencing it.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, we pick up and she's in a new setting, picking up 10 years later, but we understand that she's kind of fleeing that LA life, right?
Yeah.
Can you give our listeners like a brief synopsis of what Beverly Kills kind of entails and what the storyline kind of is bringing up?
Beverly Kills 1 and Beverly Kills Again.
And Beverly Kills Again. I'm sorry, I keep saying just Beverly Kills. I know. I apologize. I think I did that already 3 times.
Yeah, no, listen, well, Beverly, as I've been saying, Beverly Kills Again is a sequel. And it's a sequel that really kind of tries to capture the jump between the end of a coming of age story and that same person many years later. And it's, listen, it's still extremely bloody. I happen to think it's still pretty funny. But, it tries to wrap, this character's head and then, our own by extension of just, what are the consequences of what you did earlier in life and how do you deal with them once you're older and how you're going to handle that.
So basically you're saying our past finds a way to catch up with us.
Yeah, listen, it's, it's ripples. You do something and, it spreads.
Yeah.
And, and things that you thought you saw one way, you get like, you saw them in the distance. And then as you get older, you get closer and they're not what you thought they were.
Yeah. If you wrote this sequel 10 years ago, like right after you did Beverly Kills 1, do you think there would have been a totally different story? Or yeah.
If I wrote it immediately after, it would have picked up immediately after. It would have been like set in New York, because I wouldn't have had that perspective of what your life is like 10 years later. It would have been like an exclusively kind of New York set story. And I think I would have kept some pieces of what became Beverly Kills Again, but in very different ways. Because, it was a book that I always kind of had turning around in my head. And, I thought it would be one way. And then as I got older, like, I saw more things and that changed more things in the book. Mm. But yeah, it would have been completely different if I had written it 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that I appreciate the most about literature versus film. With literature, it's more individual, right? It's you kind of get what the author is going through. Like it's written through their filter of what they're feeling at that point in time in their life. So like you said, if you had written this 10 years ago, this would have probably been a totally different story, different plot line, set in a different time. But because of different experiences you've had, it alters itself and it becomes a different story, which is so cool to think about. And to think about all like the other possibilities that could happen in the future with that too.
Yeah.
So very cool. I don't know if this is spoiler territory, but as I mentioned at the end of Beverly Kills 1, Anthony kind of gives the impression he's not going to give up. Yeah. So with the sequel to Beverly Kills Again, I'm curious why that's important. Like, why is it important that he doesn't give up? And is it because it like drives home this like ripple, like you were saying, is it like a physical representation of our past catching up to us, or do you feel like it's even more than that?
Well, I think it's the catalyst for the entire, second half of of the story. And like you said, like it's something from her past that she never resolved. But like when it starts, she's content. She's I don't think she's really examining her life that much, but like a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
But she's happy, and she's happy enough, and she could have gone on that way forever. But a part of who she was has come back.
Mhm.
And that is things that like, and she tries to grapple with this, like like she never resolved it. And things that you don't resolve tend to come back one way or another, whether it's things you really have to confront, or things just in your psyche and never quite get settled. So and like he doesn't come back in the second one. He doesn't come back right away. And again, that was also deliberate. Like I didn't want in the first one, like it's really both of their stories, but the second one is really her story, and just like he has a part to play in that. So I held him back kind of deliberately. Like I wanted you to almost forget that there was an Anthony, and it was just Beverly's life. And then nope, he's back.
And I appreciate that a lot, actually, that it wasn't just like, because while Anthony is an important part of the first the first one, he's not he's the counterpart. Like he's kind of, he is almost like the antagonist in a way. Like she becomes our protagonist, even, which is so crazy to think, like the person doing the murdering is the protagonist, but he presents challenge to her for her mission of murder. So it's not like he's an interesting character because he's like this like underdog that you root for, you want him to get the girl. But then after he gets her, it's more of just like, now he's just in her way. So you don't, like, in order for this sequel to really build, you do need that separation from him so she can become herself again. She can reestablish herself, I guess you would say, as that monster that we love. And then he, interferes as he does. I do find that whole idea really interesting, though. This idea that she is the protagonist, that we're rooting for the person who does heinous acts.
Well, it's because, listen, the way I present it, like, yes, she's murdering people. They could just easily be someone who like wants to be an athlete, or wants to be like an actor, or a screenwriter. These are paths in life that really you have to dedicate yourself to in a way that doesn't necessarily let you just kind of do a normal adult life with just like comfort and security. So yes, we don't relate to the murder, but I think like what Beverly is going through, in the sense of, this is what I love, and this is what I want to do with my life.
This is my passion.
Yeah, this is my passion. Murder is my passion. Graphic murder is my passion.
You hear that, kids? If you want to murder, you have to grind. You have to have passion.
Chase your dreams, kids. Chase your bloody dreams.
Yeah. And you would never think that the person that's like the antagonist, the one getting in the way, the one like is this little like the dorky lover boy.
It's like, maybe you don't murder people.
Yeah. You ever thought about that part? Like maybe we should just stop. No. Why do you love Beverly?
Just kind of that same thing. Like, again, like, listen, the murders are bad. I do not endorse the murders.
Yeah.
But listen, in her own way, she's very relatable. And like she's just kind of trying to be who she is. And, it was important to me that like, listen, she wasn't molested, she wasn't traumatized.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
No, because like you add that element, then it's like you kind of feel like, oh, well, that's why. It's like, there is no why. Like, she was born that way, the same way other people are born, just to love things.
So you didn't want people to feel sorry for her. That was important.
I didn't want people to feel sorry for her. I didn't want people to feel like there was some like reason that you could blame this on. Like, oh, well, that's why she does it. Like, no, she just does it.
Yeah.
Like, her life is fine. Nothing bad happened to her.
Yeah.
But this is just.
And I love her perspective on the world, right? Like the way that she views people. Like she says it. She says the thing that most of us are probably thinking, like when we see a creepy dude hitting on a girl and it's really uncomfortable to watch and everybody sees through it, she calls it out. Like she sees the intentions and she just says it for what it is. When she sees jocks and when she was in high school, she sees like they're kind of easy targets. Even though they're the most popular, they're also like the easiest targets because they care about.
I tried to write her just like as very separate, like almost like she doesn't think of herself as human. Like we are a different species to her.
Yeah.
And which is a sociopathic trait. Like like you're less than me. Yeah, but like that's kind of like the idea. Just like she's like, oh well, this is what people do. I don't do that.
Right, but she knows how to blend in.
She does. Yeah.
Yep. Like I said, she's kind of like Dexter, because like he's obviously really masterful at killing. He can, he knows how to cover up his traces, his tracks, and he sees things that other people don't see. But she lacks the vigilante aspect. Like he is very much like, I have this murderous part inside me, but I'm gonna hone it for good. She's like, just whoever.
Again, like listen, they're a different species.
Yeah. Yep. So I saw somebody posting an idea about like, what was it exactly? So how people can like feel like they're very self-aware. I think it was in one of the reviews, actually. Somebody had posted how like steadfast she was about knowing who she is. And how like that can just become totally uprooted, or like just something, any situation can just throw us for a complete loop and we start to question who we are. And that's the thing with Beverly, right? It's like just that I think I know who I am, but then something makes me question it.
Right.
I mean, do you feel like we all kind of go through that?
I mean, I think we all have the potential to go through that. Like, listen, it depends what happens to you. But like, I think we all have like, like our rocks, our anchors, like our guideposts. Like, this is how, like, like this is how I define myself. This is how I orient myself. And so long as you have that and that's stable, listen, you can be okay for a long time. But sometimes things happen.
Yeah.
Either, I mean, listen, somebody dies, something gets introduced into that system. All of a sudden, that rock you had is destroyed, or you are pulled away from it, and then you're just like, well, where the hell am I now?
Yeah. I also kind of was getting the thought of like when people over-identify with something. So she over-identifies with being a murderer, right? And then it becomes her entire identity, and she struggles with anything else. And there's numerous times she could easily walk away from that and make a totally different choice and have a totally different life that would probably be easier. It just wouldn't satisfy that primal urge that she has inside to murder. And she just, but because of that over-identification, she just can't make that change. She can't shift to that. Even if it's like there's a part of her that really does know that it would feel really good, like just to take the easy path and fall in love and start a life.
And that's why I think why she does what she does at the end of the first one. It's almost like, like Cortez burning the ships. Like, this is causing me to question what I believe is my thing. Well, guess what? Now it's dead.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, listen, I'm committed to what I'm doing.
Yeah. She's joined by some like-minded folk.
Yeah.
In Beverly Kills Again. Why did you decide to give her a new family?
Well, again, like that idea of like, of the rocks, of these anchor points. Like she felt like she didn't belong, and she felt like, she had to take this path. And now all of a sudden there are, she's not alone in that.
Yeah.
And it changes, what she thought was going to happen.
I envision that being what it was like when the strangers came together. Just thinking about like that new Strangers film that's coming out, but like, oh, there's other people like me, and you can do some pretty fucked up things when you find other people that are like you. I along with reading the reviews, I read probably 5, 6, 7, almost 10 reviews saying that they felt this sequel surpasses the first book. How do you feel about hearing that?
Listen, it beats the hell out of the alternative. But, well, listen, in a very real sense, Beverly Kills was the first book I wrote. I wrote it when I was in my mid-20s. You like to think you get better with time. Like, like you like to think that like the 10 years you spend writing pay some kind of dividends.
So if you didn't hear that, you would have been crushed and probably retired from writing.
Again, listen, you have your past. I would have written on, but it's still just kind of like, no one wants to hear that, it doesn't work. But you have to, for yourself. I guess now I'm talking like Beverly. Like you have to do it for yourself. So at the end of the day, I was happy with with what came out, and so that was the important thing. But to hear people say that like they thought it was better, that it was kind of different than a lot of other things I've done, which I feel like it is. Like I tend to write kind of more of a, for the most part, like a supernatural slant, and this is very grounded.
Yeah.
So and it's kind of, Beverly is like my cynical character. Like I tend to kind of try and like find like, even if it's horror and it's dark, like there's some hope, there's some silver lining. Beverly's just dark, and it's always just kind of like my dark little corner. So it's nice to hear that people respond to that, and it's well received.
Yeah, I did not find one negative review amongst all the reviews I found, which awesome. That congratulations. That in this day and age, like I always say, like it's so easy to find negative reviews for things because people love to do negative reviews. To actually get people to write positive things is almost a struggle. And for this book to have as many reviews as I found, and all of them to be positive, I mean, that speaks so loudly. So congrats on that. And I'm super proud of you for getting that, response. And I, obviously I knew you would. After the 13 Black Cats, I was like, this guy is an amazing writer. Like I loved that book. I loved the way you wrote it. I loved the style it was written in, the storyline, the character development. I loved everything about it. I kind of fell in love with Beverly. Like this character.
Watch out.
Oh, I wouldn't. Trust me. Yeah, no, I'll stay far away from her. I will admire from a distance. But what's so funny is like now that you say that, like thinking back even to the structure of like chapters, which for me is like I look at things like that because I get really anxious about page numbers and chapter lengths. The first one was like amazing because it was like these little short chapters. Your second one, longer chapters, but like I feel like that's probably because you've developed as a writer and your content and detail and all that stuff is increased and honed. But it does show growth, so that's always important. But again, congrats on that. That's awesome.
Like I said, it's just and I appreciate it, like from you, from reviewers, because listen, you don't do it for reviews. You write because you want to do it and you want to enjoy it, but it's also meant to be shared. Like like if I just wrote this whole thing and then just like put in a drawer and no one ever saw it, it kind of defeats the purpose of what you're doing. So when you do offer it out, you want for me at least, it's not about like like being praised. It's about like knowing that like you shared something and it was appreciated.
Yeah.
So it is rewarding. Like and I've gotten kind of onto like onto the horror convention circuit a little bit, and there's shows now that I've done multiple years. And listen, I'm not rich, I'm not famous, but there are people who come back every year and they say, "Oh, I got that one last year, it was so good. I want this one." Like it's an impact, and it's rewarding. It's cool. It is good. I'd be lying if I said otherwise.
That's the part that for me I feel like would be so would just be like just feel so gratifying. I've seen that a lot with like the horror authors, particularly just like the ones that are local to here that we it's just like it's almost like collecting, right? People want to collect your books, which I think is cool because that means if they want to collect it, then obviously they like it, but then they want to share it with their friends too. So that's really cool. Speaking of that, can you tell us, well, I do want to hear about your upcoming projects, but you just mentioned like you're doing horror conventions and stuff like that. Could you just tell the listeners where they can find you if you're going to be live in any places, and also where they can find your books if they're not going to be able to see you live?
Yeah. Well, first, if you're not going to see me live, everything's on Amazon, everything's on Barnes and Nobles. You can find me on Facebook, Sean McDonough, horror author, and I sell, signed copies direct. You DM me, I'll put my little scribble in it and I'll send it out to you. And then in terms of like live events, I got a pretty good calendar this year. In March, I'm actually going to be out by you guys next weekend, Rhode Island College Author Con.
Yeah.
So I'll be there for that. In April, I will be at an event called Scares That Cares Author Con in Williamsburg, Virginia, weekend of August 12th. Scares That Cares Author Con, write this down. It is the place to be for if you like horror fiction.
Okay.
If you can get yourself to Williamsburg, Virginia, the weekend of April 12th, anybody who's anybody in the indie horror, underground horror, mid-tier, lower than Stephen King level of horror is there. And again,
did you hear that, everyone? Stephen King's going to be there.
Listen, like to your point, like the horror community, the reader community is great. Like it's just there's so much it's the most emotion. The horror community is the most emotionally healthy community I've seen. Just like a minimum of drama, a minimum of fighting. Like everyone is happy to talk to everyone. So it's gonna be my first time at it. I'm very excited. So that is gonna be a great one.
Awesome.
And then kind of more in the Northeast, in June, I'm at an event on Long Island, Moonlight Market at Great South Bay Brewery in Bay Shore. In September, I'll be at CT Horror Fest in Connecticut, which is
cool.
a very cool, not just books, like, movies, Tony Todd's going to be there.
Oh, they're going to have Tony Todd this year?
They got Tony Todd,
Oh, very cool.
My wife got into this a little bit. Like, she does diamond paintings, just like artwork with like little gemstones.
Yeah.
And she did them as a hobby, and then she ran out of people to give them to. So I said, why don't you do a couple horror ones, and you can like come to a show with me. And she did very well for herself, and now like she's got the bug. So she's like, oh, we can go to this one, we can go to that one. But
awesome.
CT Horror Fest has been like our big one, and now it's like she like stalks the guest list of like, oh, Tony Todd's coming, I gotta do Candyman, or oh, this Michael Myers is gonna be there, gotta make sure we do a Michael Myers, gotta do an Elvira.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's another good one. And then in October it's Bay Shore again for the second Moonlight Market.
Awesome. And just I think I don't know if you mentioned this, but like the one at Rhode Island College, the Horror Author Con, that's March 23rd for anyone.
March 23rd, yeah. March 23rd. So next Saturday. Clear your calendars.
Yes. And now I want you to also going back to how to find you, I don't think you mentioned, unless you don't want people to find you, on Instagram.
Yeah, I have an Instagram. It's called House of the Boogeyman, Sean McDonough. Just I post on the Instagram, but I do tend to the Facebook is where I get the most interaction. So that's where I do like a lot of, and also it's more friendly for my kind of stupid text oriented jokes. Like I know the future of social media is video and that kind of thing. But
unfortunately,
I'm a writer. I write jokes. So
all right.
I never seem to make a Threads or a Twitter take off, but my Facebook is okay. I write stupid jokes.
Okay. And can you tell us if you have anything that you're currently working on as far as like writing books?
You know what? I'm doing a little bit of a gap year right now. Because, listen, I've been writing novels for 10 years straight, pretty much. So I'm still working, but, from like around like December until I'm telling myself through kind of like the rest of this year, and then we'll see what happens. But I'm taking an opportunity to like work on a couple of different things. I'm working on a movie script, which listen, you'll appreciate because I see Jason and Ghostface and all the boys in the back there. It's called Killer Lineup, and it's a slasher set at a horror convention around like a fictional Friday the 13th franchise.
Yeah.
So I really like it. Like
that sounds. I'm surprised no one's done this already. What an obvious location. That's so great.
Yeah. It's just, like I said, I got into scripts before I got into books, and like, it's fun to write. I enjoy writing a script, but like, again, it's just like, you have these ideas and you think they're good, and it's just, unless so many things fall into place, no one sees it but you.
Yeah.
So like, it's so good. I like not to be an egoist, but it's like I can tell when I'm doing well. This is very good, very fun, very gory.
Awesome.
So Listen, I'll chase down a few leads, and then if nothing comes of it, I don't know, maybe I'll just put it online for free and people can just read it
There you go.
because it's a good one.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that, and even though I didn't plan to write any books, I'm working on like at least like a little short novella, and I know it's going to be short, which is in its own way kind of freeing because like I don't feel like I have to pad it out. I can just kind of move from gimmick to gimmick, and it'll just be done. It's a parody of like the '80s like pulp horror novels called Not Another '80s Horror Novel. And
There you go.
parentheses because it's a novella. That's going to be the full title. Not
Okay.
Another '80s Horror Novel because it's a novella. But it's just like it's going to be just like a parody of like all like the tropes and you know just the plot lines because I love that old shit so much. It's so much fun.
That sounds like your next couple of projects. You're just looking to have a good time and enjoy.
Yeah, like little things like you know like listen, the script's already in its like second or third draft. This novella, like listen, I'm not being lazy, but like I'm not gonna go through it 8 million times just to like you know make sure everything. Writing a parody, like it kind of frees you to not worry too much about like, oh, this is unbelievable, or oh, that's rushed. I'm like, well, we're not worried about that. We're just like hitting these like thematic points, and that's the end of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you the kind of a random question. Can you tell our listeners a book that you've read maybe within the last, I don't know, few months that you highly recommend? That's not your own.
That's not my own. I'm just gonna look to my left real quick where my stack of books.
I ask you specifically because I know you are a collector of books. You like to seek out like hard to find ones.
Yeah, and they're right here. And they're right here on my shelf because I got so much crap these days that I don't have room to put them away. So the most recently read ones just kind of sit here.
Yeah.
So I got 3 for you. And again, conveniently, I can actually physically hold them up. So number 1 is Skeletons, Al Sarantonio, I'm going to go with. A meteorite flies too close to the Earth and brings all the dead back to like the skeletons, but with their personalities, including every historical figure. A main character is skeleton Abraham Lincoln.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, it's straight up Abe Lincoln, not like, oh, you can't read, like, no, he's Abe Lincoln. He thinks like Abe, he talks like Abe, he's just a fucking skeleton that hates humans. And it is so good.
This needs to be adapted immediately.
Yeah. Listen, I want skeleton Abe Lincoln.
Yes. What year is that book? Do you know? Is it like a newer book or?
No. These are all oldies. You know, this one is 92, which honestly is about 5 years older than I would have guessed. I would have said mid-80s, but sometimes the good ones take a little while. So there's that. There is Devil's Moon, which is just about a murder tree.
Okay.
Like it's a Native American cursed murder tree.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Again, another good one from the old days. And then Thunder Rise, which is about a cursed Native American mountain, because I guess that's just, you know, the vibe he's at that point in time, you know, just cursed Native American things. Okay. But, you know, this one, very well, G. Wayne Miller, very well written, especially kind of like its time and its pulpy sort of style, like a lot of really good character work, a lot of good kind of like references to just like, you know, like life in that era. Seemed like the author had some issues with his ex-wife he needed to work out. I'm not going to delve too deeply into that, but the venom seems personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's this like a whole string of like Native American like supernatural and horror. There's one author in particular, and his name's escaping me.
Stephen Graham Jones.
Okay. He did like, there was a book like Skinwalkers I had gotten, but then I noticed that there was a bunch of others that all looked like they were like a line of like the same storyline. It's pretty cool. But
if you're looking for legitimately like, you know, like really good, well-written, literary, excellent horror from like a Native American perspective, Stephen Graham Jones, The Only Good Indians, Don't Fear the Reaper, My Heart is a Chainsaw. He's so good. Like, and he's literary, kind of like high-minded writer, good, but he's excellent. Great character work, great love of horror.
Awesome.
Writes from that perspective, so good.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's an interesting realm that we don't get exposed to enough. So that's really cool. Sean, thank you, man, so much for joining me tonight. This was a pleasure. It was cool talking about Beverly Kills after, getting to read both of them back to back. It was nice to kind of get your thoughts and kind of hear you discuss these characters that, they're just something else. Like this, like I do really encourage everyone who's listening, if you haven't already read Beverly Kills 1, read it first for sure. Don't skip just to Beverly Kills Again. But I do encourage everybody to get out and read these books. Definitely very enjoyable. And I mean, it's right up our audience's alley. Like,
the man's talking to America. Listen to him. He knows what he's talking about.
Thank you. So Sean, when you finish whatever next projects you want to, discuss, hit us up again, come back on, and we'll do this again. All right.
I'll see you in 2 years.
And I hope that you enjoyed that PVD horror beer that we had sent. I'll make sure next one we have comes your way again too.
That was excellent. Thank you very much. Look forward to some more of that.
Awesome, man. All right, everybody. Sean McDonough, make sure you get onto Barnes & Noble, Amazon, order those books, or go to any of those live events. They're going to be all over the place. Got New York, Virginia, and Rhode Island. So, and I'm sure there'll be more. So make sure you follow them on social media as well. All right, everybody. Have a good night. We will see you next week. See ya.
Take care, folks.
Takes a lot of love for a person to